TV. Thank you for watching and for donating.
Well, in the case of Yemen, the U.S. is not only killing people from Yemen, it is also killing American citizens. You might have heard of the case of Anwar al-Awlaki, a cleric who was born in the United States, moved to Yemen, known for his fiery sermons. The U.S. government put him on a kill list and killed him as well as another American, Samir Khan. But they have refused to release the information that showed that these gentlemen were not just radical clerics, but were actually involved in activities meant to kill Americans. They were sued by the ACLU, also by the Center for Constitutional Rights, but on the basis of national security, the government said it was not going to release that information, even after these two men had been killed. But it's worse than that, because the US government also killed the son of Anwar al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old named Abdul Rahman. You can see in these pictures they were from his Facebook page. He was born in Denver. He had on his Facebook that he liked rap and hip hop and swimming. His friends in Denver said he was an ordinary American kid, had absolutely no ties to any militant activity. And yet, because there is no accountability for these drone strikes, when Abdul Rahman was killed in a drone strike, the US government did not feel even compelled to say why, if it was a mistake, what happened. And it wasn't until March of this year that Eric Holder, the Attorney General, started to give some justification for these drone strikes when he was speaking before a group of law students at Northwestern University. And basically what our government is saying is that the drone strikes are justified on the basis of international law because countries have the right to self-defense. But the right to self-defense is very narrowly defined. It has to be that there is an imminent danger. Somebody is just about to bomb you, just about to attack you, and you have to give your enemies a chance to surrender. That is certainly not the case in what the United States is doing today. The government also says they're justified in these drone strikes because after 9/11, the Congress, with the exception of one person, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, gave the green light to the government to use military force to find and attack those who were associated with the attack on 9/11. Now, it's important to remember those who were associated with the attack on 9/11, because now many of the people that are being killed with our drone strikes were maybe 10 or 11 years old at the time of 9/11, and some of the organizations, like the organization in Yemen, didn't even exist at the time of 9/11. So I have a chapter in the book on the legality of the drone strikes where I quote a lot of people who are constitutional lawyers who say that this is a tremendous violation of international law as well as domestic law. But there's one other legal issue that I think it's important to bring up, and that's the way the US government is now justifying the killing of American citizens overseas with drone strikes. And Eric Holder basically said that it seems like the American people are under the misunderstanding of the Constitution, that they think that somehow the Constitution guarantees Americans judicial process. But that is really not true, says Eric Holder. It only guarantees you something called due process. So in the book, I quote who I thought had the best response to Eric Holder, and that wasn't a constitutional lawyer. It was a late-night comedian named Stephen Colbert. So Colbert said, yes, the founders weren't picky. Trial by fire, trial by jury, rock, paper, scissors, who cares? Due process just means there is a process that you do. The current process is that the president meets with his advisors, decides who to kill, and then goes out and kills them. If we are going to win our never-ending war against terror, there are bound to be casualties, says Colbert, and one of them just happens to be the US Constitution. So leave it to the comedians to be the truth tellers of our times. So All of this might seem to the American people that we can just get away with it and so it's okay, but I think there's a misunderstanding that maybe the Americans are the only ones that have access to these weapons, and that is far from the truth because there is an arms race now with drones. Most of them being sold, they're saying that these are surveillance drones. But the drones that are being used by the United States now to kill people were surveillance drones as well. You just strap on some weapons to surveillance drones and you have lethal drones. So the US is #1 producer, #1 user of drones, but right behind the US is Israel. Israel and the United States have a very close relationship with this drone program now for decades, and Israel has used the drones in the attack on the Gaza Strip. In the Operation Cast Lead 2008-2009, of the 1,400 people killed, over 800 of them were killed by drones, and the Israeli government continues to use drones constantly for surveillance and to kill Palestinians. But Israel is #1 when it comes to the export of drones, having exported drones to 50 different countries. #3 is China. China recognizes a growth market when it sees it and is now producing dozens of different kinds of drones. So you have to sit back for a minute and think that there are probably over 60 countries now that have drones. You remember when the Iranians downed a drone that was a spy drone from the United States? They said they hacked into it and they showed it before the world cameras saying, "Thank you, President Obama. This is a very sophisticated present that you just gave us." And a couple of months later said that they had reversed engineered that drone and now were making their own. So think about all the countries that have drones, non-state entities that have drones. This is not nuclear weapons we're talking about. This is much easier technologies. And so what are other countries thinking? Why shouldn't China say, we are at war against the Tibetans or the Uyghurs, and we're going to go kill them here in the United States? Or the Russians say, those Chechen terrorists, we're going to go find them in Europe. Or the Cubans say, we know there are known terrorists living in Miami, and we're going to get a drone and drop a Hellfire missile on their apartment in Miami, and if we kill a couple of the neighbors, well, you know, that's what happens. Obviously, other countries are not yet doing that, and especially here in the United States, because they know the US would not accept that, and that would be a reason for the US to retaliate. But we do have to think at some point what goes around comes around, and whether it's going to be an attack from another country on us here, or attack by individuals from the outside to the inside, or people here in this country who now have the idea of doing their own souped-up model planes, and there was already an example of this caught by the FBI. But I think we should think about drones coming here at home. And of course, this is not just coming from other people trying to attack us, but drones that our own government is using here at home. So how many of you think that there are a large number of drones already being used here in the United States? And how many of you think there are not many drones being used in the United States? Well, Tyke's cheating because he's been traveling with me, and we have one other person, so 2 people here in the room are right. There are not a lot of drones being used in the United States yet, and that's the operative word, is yet. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, is the organization that is in charge of our airspace. And they take their mandate to keep that airspace safe very seriously. So they have been giving out permits for experimental use of drones in the United States. And here I'm not talking about the very little drones. I'm talking about bigger drones that could collide with airplanes, that could crash and kill people on the ground. And they understand that these drones do crash a lot. In fact, the Air Force has admitted that 1/3 of their drones crash. The CIA never admits anything, so we don't know how many of their drones have crashed. But we had the spectacle just less than a month ago in Maryland where one of the huge Global Hawks crashed. And it crashed into a swamp in Maryland, luckily, but it could have crashed very well into a residential neighborhood and killed a lot of people. So the FAA has been giving out experimental permits, but they have also been reluctant to tell us, the public, who got the permits, and it's thanks to lawsuits by the Electronic Frontier Foundation that we're starting to get that information and understand that some of the agencies are government agencies like the FBI, Homeland Security. Border Patrol is using drones already on the southern and the northern borders, that some of the companies who are producing drones have permits to test them. Many of the state universities in this country have contracts with the military to do research and test the drones. And then there's maybe about a dozen police departments that are experimenting with drones. Well, the drone manufacturers consider this a big problem because they say that this is way too slow. And they are losing markets in Iraq, and they're losing markets now in Afghanistan. They need more markets, and they are drooling at the possibilities for drone use here in the United States, especially when it comes to police departments, because there's about 18,000 police departments. So what did they do? They formed an association, a lobby group, and this lobby group did what most lobby groups do, is that they bought Congress people, and they now have 58 members of Congress who are part of a drone caucus. A drone caucus. These people think they were elected by we the people with a mandate to address what they say is the urgent need to see more unmanned aerial vehicles being used overseas and at home, both commercially and by law enforcement agencies. So they worked with the association, they wrote a new piece of legislation, they got it passed through Congress, signed by President Obama on Valentine's Day of this year, a big Valentine's Day present for the drone industry. And it says that our airspace has to be fully integrated with drones by the end of September 2015 at the latest, and before that for law enforcement agencies. So I mentioned that there's 18,000 police stations in the United States. Well, what might they want these drones for? We can take a look at a press conference that was held by a sheriff's department and the company when they got their first drone, and this is outside of Houston. The other question you might be wondering is, where are police departments getting the money to buy drones? You know, everybody's budget is getting cut. Even police departments' budgets are getting cut. They don't have money for pensions. They don't have money. They're cutting police officers. Well, in comes Homeland Security to the rescue. And Homeland Security is giving out grants to these police departments, like a drug pusher saying, oh, little girl, wouldn't you like to try out one of these? And lo and behold, you know, they get hooked on the drone, and the other police departments say, well, hey, how come we don't have a drone? So this is at a press conference when outside of Houston, the CEO of the company called Vanguard Defense told reporters that yes, these are drones for surveillance, for search and rescue missions, but they're also designed to be weaponized and could be outfitted with what we call less lethal systems. Tasers that can electrocute suspects on the ground, beanbag firing guns called stun batons, grenades, they can fire tear gas, rubber bullets, or they can even have a 12-gauge shotgun attached to them. But the sheriff at the press conference said, don't worry, no matter what we do in law enforcement, somebody's going to question it. But we're going to do the right thing, and I can assure you of that. So are you feeling reassured? Neither are groups like the ACLU, who are extremely worried about this. And not only groups like the ACLU, but groups on the left and groups on the right, groups of libertarians, supporters of Ron Paul. My group, Code Pink, has been working with the Cato Institute, the very conservative group that takes all that Koch brothers money, to say, we don't want these drones in our community violating our privacy. And so this is a chance for us to really start teaming up and forming broad-based coalitions to stop the police departments from getting drones and stop this 24/7 kind of surveillance society that we could be moving toward. And let's not let's not kill ourselves either. Let's not kid ourselves when you think of who they would be surveilling. Who do you think they might be surveilling? All of us. Peace activists, dissidents, people in the Occupy groups, Muslim community, African American community, anybody. So yes, many of us in this room.